Hello and welcome to another video. My name's Parham. I'm an entrepreneur and property investor. In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 controversial facts, or what I believe to be facts, that aren't widely out there in terms of property investing. So stick with me. I'm going to hopefully save you thousands of pounds, make you tens of thousands of pounds, speed you up on your journey. Let's go to the whiteboard. It's Whiteboard Wednesday. Let's go and get into it now. Let's go. So guys, welcome to the whiteboard, and as I said back in the house, I'm going to give you 5 controversial, what I believe to be facts when it comes to property investing based on my 10 years of experience and 15 years of experience of being an entrepreneur, building businesses and being generally regarded as fairly successful amongst my peer group. So my first one that I'm going to bring to you is that limited company isn't always best. Now, it quite often is best for the accountant, which is why I think, and I'm not suggesting that anyone's doing anything bad, but I think it's the default setting for most people. But ultimately, when you look at the facts, quite often limited company isn't going to be what's best for every single investor. Now, I created a sheet, you can download it for free. I'll put a link in the description, it's under the resources tab, and it gives you a basic analysis. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, nor am I a tax expert. But that sheet has been created as a basic guide for you to have a look and see what looks like it might be best for you. I understand everybody will have their own nuances. I understand everybody has their own personal circumstances. But ultimately, for a lot of people, certainly for anybody who's a basic rate taxpayer and is only looking to replace their income, I can't see that a limited company would ever be better for them. For a lot of people that are looking to live an income of less than £5,000 a month, even if they're a higher tax rate payer now, still I can't make a limited company best. So I think it's really important that when you set out on your property journey, you create a plan, but that plan involves which wrapper are you going to put your properties in and what's actually best for you. And limited company should not be the default setting. I've recently just got a mortgage on a personal property that I own, a buy-to-let, and it's fixed at 1.69%. We're borrowing £363,000 and it's costing us less than £500 a month. It's insanely cheap. Equally, I've got a buy-to-let mortgage on a limited company at 3.5%. Any saving I would have made on the tax has been spent on the increase on the interest rate. So just bear that in mind. There are also more complexities. There's lots of other things to take into consideration. And this isn't by any means a definitive guide, but I don't believe that a limited company is always best for the client. But I do believe it very much is for the accountant recommending it. That's quite controversial. So number 2, and I said these were going to be controversial. The first one certainly is. HMOs down south can rock. And not only can they rock, they can beat HMOs up north. I think everybody's talking about HMOs up north because they look at it and go, actually, that's a cheap point in which to buy. And it feels good as a southerner that we're going to get a 5-bedroom property or a 6-bedroom property for £150,000 to £200,000. You can never get that down south. It feels good, right? It feels like you're getting a lot of value. But when you actually play around with the figures, quite often HMOs down south can be as good, if not better, than HMOs up north. And I'm going to give you an example of 2 properties that were run past me last week, as in the first week of May, and I think both of them will still be on Rightmove as we speak, or as I speak right now. And this is being released in 2 days' time, so on Wednesday this video will come out, so you may well be able to find both these properties. And that was a 6-bedroom HMO in Reading, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, Reading's about 20 minutes outside of London on the train line. And this is a 6-bedroom, already licensed HMO. Fully licensed and fully tenanted. Now, it's up for sale for £375,000, which means to purchase it, you're going to need about £100,000-ish. Depending on your personal circumstances. Again, you know, you may not need to pay stamp duty if you are a first-time buyer. There are lots of things that could play into this, but 100k-ish is going to be the ballpark. That would give you a return on investment of about 20%. At the same time, somebody sent me through a deal in Burnley last week, which I think was 175,000. It might have been 200, but I think it was 175,000. And that was for a 6-bedroom HMO. Again, saying that there'll be a return on investment of about 22%. Now you need 50k-ish to do that. Now assuming that I'm a buyer with £100,000, all day, every day, I'm going for the property in Reading. And the reason is that it's much easier for me to buy one property than it is for me to buy two. Not only is it easier, it's quicker, and time is quite often the only thing I can't make any more of. So with that in mind, I know that that's going to be a quicker transaction, it's going to be easier for me to do, I'm going to provide, I think it was about £1,600 a month of net income on that deal, whereas this was only going to be about £800, £900 a month of net income. So when you look at the two and you put them up against each other, really this was far superior. So I'm really sorry, I've just checked my emails, that wasn't a 6-bed, it was a 5-bed. But you get the point, right? It was fairly similar. I'm sure I could find a 6-bed, it'll be a bit more expensive, but you get the point, right? If you're looking at value for money, this versus this, 50k in, 22% versus 20%, I'm buying down south. And frankly, 20% on my money is a really strong return on investment for any HMO. So here's the next one. Stamp duty being 0 for BRRRR. Now I think the single thing that has affected buy, refurbish, refinance, rent strategy in the last 10 years is the additional 3% stamp duty on all the purchases. I think it just kills so many deals, especially down south when you're looking at purchase prices of 250, 300,000, you know, even 200,000, putting £6,000 of additional stamp duty down really quite often kills the deal. But what I have found is using the PN Bewley versus HMRC rule, which basically stated that a property was uninhabitable if it failed its EPC, if it didn't have a kitchen or bathroom, anything that basically meant that someone couldn't move into it today, so it was classed as non-residential. And when you go to purchase a property, there's two boxes. There's one that says residential and one that says mixed use non-residential. And if you tip the mixed use non-residential, and you can do this on a stamp duty calculator, the stamp duty on a £200,000 property goes from being, so I've done the calculation quickly, I just jumped onto my phone, and it's £7,500 if you pay the stamp duty under residential, and only £2,000 if you were to use the SDLT of non-residential or mixed use. So it's a huge saving, and it actually means that so many more deals become available and actually start to stack up. Because this £5,000 2.5% of the purchase price. It can make a big difference when it comes to actually leveraging the finance and making sure that the deals stack up. So I would say that if the property is still habitable, but in a very, very bad state of repair, then you might find that that deal wouldn't stack up anywhere near as well as something that you could class as non-habitable and was in the similar sort of state of repair. So I would always say for BRRR, circumventing this using PM Bewley versus HMRC as the case law in order for you to do this. And believe me, please send this to your solicitor if they don't believe you, because it's really important. I had a client very, very recently who was going to pay this for stamp duty because their solicitor wasn't aware of this case. And as soon as they made them aware of this case, they suddenly became an expert and required video evidence and all sorts of things. And I was like, no, you don't need to do this. This is a declaration that you're making. Obviously, you should keep evidence of what state it's in, but you don't need to send or supply any of that to the HMRC. It's a tick box exercise. So just so that you know when you're speaking to your solicitor, it is a tick box exercise. It's your declaration. They should tick the box that you're specifying. So my next one on here is service accommodation carries more risk and complexity for the returns involved. Now, capitalism is all based around risk and reward, not just reward and reward. And it also pays a premium for complexity, i.e. the more complex a task, the more money you can charge. Now, service accommodation, in my experience, I've got a couple of service accommodations. One of them I've had some problems with. We, in fact, during COVID, managed to get it seized by the police because some people rented it, they had a party, the police came in, changed the locks, and then wouldn't allow us access to the property until we had proven our identity, had an interview under caution for potentially organising parties, supplied them with the details of the booker. There was a lot involved. Now, I know that is a specific set of circumstances that has led to that. But my point is, I have spoken to lots and lots of people who've had issues with their service accommodation, as well as people who've run them very successfully without issues. So the thing that I really want to get across to you is it is not the answer to everybody's problems. Service accommodation is a fantastic strategy, managed correctly, and I'll do another video on how to manage service accommodations more successfully, and I've certainly got some good tips on that. But Ultimately, it carries more risk and therefore it carries more returns. But you must understand that risk and reward go hand in hand. And I think quite often it's wheeled out as the saviour of all property investors, and that's just simply not the case. So on to my fifth and final controversial thing I'm going to say today. And this one's very, 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 very controversial. I believe rent to rent carries unacceptable risks for the level of returns. And let me explain why. I believe that rent to rent, when you look at it in detail, quite often leaves very little margin for the person executing the strategy. And the reason is capitalism kind of takes care of that, right? The person purchases the building and then rents it out to the person who's going to do the rent to rent. Now, about 10 to 15% return on investment is going to be required by the landlord. Now, assuming that there's 15 to 20% margin on a HMO, that will only leave the person who's doing the rent to rent with a 5 to 10% margin. Now that's not enough. If anything goes wrong, that person will start to make a loss on this property. And I have spoken to people who have made losses on rent to rents. In fact, I've spoken to more people who've made losses on them than I have that's made profits. But that's not to say that I haven't spoken to people who are making money on rent to rents. I have. I've spoken to a couple who are doing very well with rent to service accommodation. And in fact, I'm hoping to interview one very, very soon to go through their experience of that sector. But I've also spoken to 3 or 4 people who are going to make money rent-to-rent HMOs. And when I look at the data, they haven't made any money yet. They're about 6 or 7 grand in the hole. I'm not sure when they're going to recoup their losses, and it doesn't take much for their deal to completely fall apart. I think ultimately capitalism really does make sure that the person that comes in and buys the property and then does it themselves will always be able to price out the rent-to-renter. And with that in mind, for me, it carries unacceptable risks for the long term. So guys, that's been my 5 controversial tips when it comes to property investing. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have a look in the description, download those free resources. They're absolutely free of charge. And guys, I'll see you again on Friday when we'll be doing a week in my life. So tune in, let's have a look and see what that looks like. Thank you so much.